Shall we begin then?
Indeed.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants in Manhattan is a really weird game. It's hard to explain the gameplay. I mean, on paper, it's just a hack and slash beat 'em up type of game where you play as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In that regard, it's a lot like the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hack and slash games for like the Genesis and the Super Nintendo from our childhood. But it's not like that at all. For one thing, it's in a 3D world, of course, but also you control all the turtles at the same time, which is a little weird. You constantly have to keep switching from one turtle to the other. Not so much in the actual pre-boss gameplay. Like, for most of the level, you just run around and you can play as one turtle easily. But when it gets to the boss fights, and there's a boss at the end of every stage, you have to have this tactical switching approach, constantly switching from one turtle to another, because otherwise it's almost impossible to beat the bosses in this game. Each turtle has 4 unique special abilities, and also each turtle can hold a couple of special items. Now the special abilities are on a cooldown, so if you use one really good special ability on one turtle, you can't use that again for a certain amount of time. So you switch to a second turtle, use that turtle's great ability, or at least the ability that is most effective versus the boss you're fighting, and again, now that's in a cooldown, the turtle is no longer useful to you. You switch to the third turtle, the fourth turtle, and so on and so forth. Basically, you use up all the turtle's special abilities during a fight, and once they are used up, that turtle is pretty much useless in the boss fight. I mean, you can still do damage as a Ninja Turtle, you can still do regular melee damage, but using the special abilities on the bosses, just spamming as many special attacks on the bosses as possible, is the clear-cut way to defeat the bosses, because all the bosses have a ridiculously long health bar. Like, it's ridiculous. You take off one health bar, and then there's a second health bar under that, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and I can't even count how many health bars. Now, every turtle starts off with 4 special abilities, but the game is crazy customizable, so you can pretty much switch up dozens and dozens of different special abilities and macro them to the specific special ability buttons. So the best thing to do is basically to equip all 4 turtles with the best possible special attacks, or at least the special attacks that you feel are the best. For me, the special attacks that do AoE, or area of effect damage, are the best. Any kind of spinning attack, any kind of attack that can hit multiple enemies and also does a lot of damage. Now, this doesn't sound like it's really good for bosses because it's an attack that hits multiple enemies, but it is, because the bosses are constantly moving around, the bosses are very agile. Some bosses can fly, some bosses jump into water once in a while. So an AoE type attack that has a big, long, wide area of effect, that's the attack that's probably gonna hit the boss. Before the boss, you're in these different stages. It could be in the sewers, it could be running on rooftops, running on the streets at night. There's a lot of variety in the levels, but there's not a lot of variety in the gameplay of these levels. It's always the same thing. You have to scan the entire play area to see where you need to go next. It could be a place where you pick something up, where you have to take something and move it somewhere else, or for the most part, it's just to beat up some enemies. So you go to that place, you beat up some enemies, or you pick up an item and take the item somewhere else, and then you rinse and repeat this over and over. Sometimes there are things that are a little different. Sometimes you have to, for example, defuse bombs, but again, it's all really busy work. It's the MMORPG equivalent of, say, kill 10 of these, collect 10 of these. That's what this game pretty much is before the boss fights. See, that's what this game is ultimately. It's bittersweet, but mostly bitter, because most of the game is the pre-boss gameplay. All of that is just repetitive and gets pretty boring pretty fast. Now, once you get to the boss, then we have strategy. Then we have tactics. And I respect tactics in video games. It's not the best tactics, but they're fun. Most of the boss fights are fun and challenging. I respect that. Some boss fights are actually a little too easy, and some boss fights are almost impossible, which both are negatives just on different sides of the spectrum. But for the most part, the average boss fight, I respect it because there's just the right amount of strategy and difficulty. Bittersweet is my score for this game. It gets an official stanburdman rating of a 6.3 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, my friends.